considering that they were like, yeah, we got 6 inches today alone.
Okay, we have quite the crew in here right now, so we will give it another couple of minutes before we ask Ashley to go ahead and go live.
Hi, Val. Are you ready for us to kick off the YouTube?
Yes, I was just about to tell you that. Go ahead and get it started, and then we'll be able to start right on time.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Val. So you got a lot of rain down there, huh?
We did, and it's still raining.
So Jennifer has let me know, Chair Early, that we are live. So
That is good news. So it is January 27th, and it's 8:30 a.m. I would like to call this board meeting for the Oregon State Marine Board to order at this time. I would also like to start off the meeting by saying thank you to Randy Henry and his team for putting together such a robust work session for us yesterday on PDFs. So thank you to Randy and his team. We will start off with the approval of the minutes for the October 21st, 2021 meeting. Everybody has had a chance to review those. I would entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. And we do have a full docket today with all board members present. So I know Craig is there, and Laura, Colleen, Vince, and of course myself. So we have had quite a bit of participation in our public comment. Of course, with these virtual meetings, we could not do any public comment at the meeting itself, but the public comment period ended on Monday evening, and we had quite the packet to go through. So we are going to move on to agenda item A at this time. But first, I would like to take a moment to recognize somebody within the Marine Board. I know Director Warren is going to continue to follow up on this, but I would like to say thank you. Thank you to Sandy for all of your service to the Oregon State Marine Board. I know that you probably don't remember this, or maybe you do, but when you came on board, my father was on the board, and he remembers you. He remembers how enthusiastic and how efficient you were during that time. I talked to him about a month ago about it, and he said, "Oh, I remember Sandy very well." Anyway, you made quite the impression on him. You have made quite the impression on the board, the voters for the state of Oregon. And I would just like to thank you for your dedication. The history and knowledge that you have for our agency is uncomparable. And we just don't see people who stay in a job for that many years anymore. And I just want to say, just how grateful I am that you have been there that entire time and have been able to carry things through different directors and different board members. So thank you, Sandy.
Well, thank you, Val. That was very nice. Yeah, it's been a fun run. And I'm gonna miss a lot of these people, most all of them. And it's grown so much from 12 people when I started to the contingent we have now, and there's been so many changes and so many directors, but it's been a fun run.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody doesn't reach out to you occasionally and ask you, "Hey, do you remember this? And can you tell me something?" I think that you are an invaluable resource.
Well, everybody's getting my home email and phone number, so I expect there'll be a few calls, but I do kind of remember your dad. I wouldn't know him if he walked up and said hi, but I remember that he was on the board, but it's been a long time.
It definitely has been. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Director Warren. But again, I would like to say thank you very much for your unwavering support of the board and the agency.
Well, thank you, Val.
Director Warren.
Yeah, Chair Early, members of the board, Larry Warren, Director of your Oregon State Marine Board. And I would just like to add, in addition, when you go to business school, they don't teach you how valuable people like Sandy are to your organization. I mean, understanding where you've been is so critical to the culture of your organization. And you mentioned Sandy's been through lots of directors. She's a true politician. She'll never name her favorite. So everybody out there, all the past directors, can just think that it was them. And but really, I think one thing that really encapsulates Sandy when you get to know her is how much she helps people. Her family, she's got a huge extended family in this area. We love hearing all the stories, but Sandy is always at the center of helping her family when those stories are coming out, and she's just such a good family, good interactions with them. And then I think one thing that really embodies who she is happened to actually just this last year. We had a rare opportunity during some of the COVID times to donate our sick leave to people across the state. And normally in the state system, we can donate our vacation hours to somebody that might need some if they're going through a medical issue, but we can't usually donate our sick leave. And Sandy was so excited because she was sitting on, I don't know what, like 3,000 hours or something, Sandy, sitting on a mountain of them. She was so excited at the opportunity to be able to donate those to people all across the state who otherwise would have gone without paychecks while they were dealing with some COVID emergencies for their families. And just because we are the state and there's always lots of forms, it wasn't easy for Sandy to do that. She had to keep trying, reminding and pushing everybody to say, "Don't you remember I'm trying to give this away to help people?" And again, Sandy, I appreciate that. I appreciate that about you, is that you've always been there to help your coworkers and your family, and I'm definitely going to miss you, miss our chats that we have when you're here. And I hope that you enjoy your retirement. You've earned it. And you give hope to those of us that are still working that someday we will retire too. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Larry.
So with that, I just, Sandy's last day is tomorrow. So we just, we'll miss her. And any last thoughts, or anybody out in the public she's interacted with so often, if you're, one last chance, if you're wanting to try to be able to connect with her afterwards, to connect with her in the next day. I think with that, Chair Early, I don't have any additional information beyond what I put in the board book. So I guess I would just take questions from the board on the director's report.
Okay, I see Craig has his hand up, so go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, of course, there's no, just a minute, clear my throat. As normal, I do have a few questions, Larry. I appreciate the report that you gave. On the bills, is the board going to take any position on those bills?
Member Withy, so when the agency doesn't sponsor legislation, we generally don't take a position on the bill. There's always a procedure in government, and so there is a procedure for state agencies that want to take a position on a bill that's not theirs, and it involves making sure that it's a governor's priority and something that they're interested in us taking a position on. But generally speaking, we try to remain neutral. That's just a or no position, and that really is a respect to the process, to where the legislative branch legislates and the executive branch administrates those bills. And so it generally speaking, we don't request to take a position on a bill that's not ours.
Thanks. My next comment was on the temporary authority that we gave you for emergency projects in response to the fires. Are we not expecting spring runoff to cause a lot of damages, which may warrant the temporary authority that we gave you in the past?
Member Withy, I think it's reasonable to assume spring runoffs may do something. Of course, what and how much and when is anybody's guess at this point. So we've got staff involved in all sorts of different committees and work groups, and keeping an eye on it, and making sure we're part of a statewide effort to respond. So it is a potential, certainly, but until we see how spring unfolds, we won't know for sure how bad it'll be.
But we have made an appraisal of the damages that we've seen so far, like at Detroit.
Member Withy, primarily the facility piece falls on Janine Black, and she is diligent and relentless in her pursuit of information about facility status. And so I can almost say without asking her that I'm sure she has checked on the Detroit facilities amongst all the others. And more importantly, I know the facility owners know that if that's something that they want us to be a part of, they know Janine's number and they know to call her. And so the boating safety staff have been out, the facility folks have been out, Janine has been out, really just trying to make sure the community knows we're here as a resource for them.
Thanks. And then on the facilities program, I appreciate the status on those projects. There are some projects that aren't included. And yeah, I'm just curious about where we're at on them. One is Port of Arlington. When we approved that project, there was an agreement that the port would find some additional funds before the project went forward. I don't know where that's at. And then the other one is Port of Toledo. You know, they were responsible for relocating the accessible operation they had on the dock. So I would like to know where that stands.
Sure. Member Withy, I could give you an approximation on Toledo, but far better than that, Janine could give you an answer. So go ahead, Janine.
Hi, Member Withy. So for Arlington, they are actually out to bid. They did secure their additional funds. They've been working very closely with us to review the consultant's design, and it is going forward. I'm really excited to see this one come about because they've worked very hard to secure the funding and to have a design that is going to serve the non-motorized boaters as well as the motorized boaters. And then Toledo, so the longtime port manager, Bud Shoemake, is retiring at the end of this month. We have met with the new port manager. She used to work for the city's Chamber of Commerce. She's worked for Travel Oregon. She comes with a vast wealth of knowledge and experience. And we are moving forward. They have a consultant who is helping them with the permitting and the gangway landing connections. We've agreed on a location, and it is moving forward. We anticipate the permits will most likely be submitted by the end of the biennium, and then if all goes well, they'll have approval within a year or less. They're working very hard to minimize the impacts. We've talked about areas to mitigate, but they are on track to complete that.
Do you know if there will be additional board funds that will be required for that relocation?
I anticipate that we will spend some waterway access money because as part of this discussion, we're talking about adding some kayak racks to encourage the public to come down and launch off of the boathouse, as well as the potential for adding a low freeboard dock off of the staging area for their education and rental facility to make it more accessible. And then the cost of the gangway, we may also receive a request to have that as part of it. But I do think that they will ask for some non-motorized funding to complete that project.
Thanks. On the waterway access funding program, I think it would be nice if there was a ceremony when we complete the first project to recognize that program and all the effort and work that's gone into it. Now, I don't know where we stand with COVID upon that event, but I think it would be nice for the board to do something like that and get some recognition in the public for what that program stands for.
I will be happy to arrange something. I'm not quite sure how it will look. It might be a Teams type of event that is shared through a city or county council process. But I will definitely work at trying to organize something.
Thanks, Janine.
You're very welcome.
On the law enforcement fleet, Brian Paulson put together an excellent presentation on the platform analysis, and I would like to see that shared with the entire board. I'm always impressed by Brian's professionalism. He does a super job, and I would like to recognize him with one of our coins when we're given the opportunity to do that. But that was an excellent presentation, and a lot of work went into that. So thanks to Brian.
And that was, just to clarify, that was presented at the law enforcement end of the year. Is that the one you're referring to, Craig, or were you referring to the one that he just did last week for the LE meeting?
Well, he does a super job every time, but I'm referring to the one he just did the last meeting, Bill.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
member,
it was excellent.
Yeah, member Withey, Chair Early, I'm looking in April, we have a work session on the marine law enforcement, and I've already alerted Randy and Brian that there was some interest in part of that, including how we handle the platforms that we help fund, and the information that Brian gathered for that LEAG would be a good backdrop for that discussion with the board. So look for that information to come at the April board meeting, and I would concur that Brian does excellent work.
Thanks. And then do we have an update on the vets day that we were planning?
Member Withey, staff have reached out, and this is going to sound a little government speak, and I always hate that, but things do start with a meeting. So we've been having some meetings. We've engaged the veterans agency, parks, Fish and Wildlife, sort of an unprecedented get together and start talking about what something like that might look like and how it could take shape. And really, at some point, kind of our first step is to try to catalog what's already happening and what's out there and what things can we perhaps plug into, and then build out from there. So it is an effort that certainly the progress is happening. It's going to probably feel a little bit of a slow to go fast, but a lot of headway is being made on the issue overall. And
I appreciate the effort. And then in that same regard, I think the board should do a lot more to promote voting and get more people involved to the extent we can. So I would like to see us do something around kids' participation in voting. I talked a little bit with Vince about this. I don't know what that looks like either, but I would like to see us do something to really promote it to the young voters in our state.
Go ahead,
Go ahead, Barry.
I was going to say, member Withey, we can certainly take a look around again at that, and probably in the same vein, start by just trying to find out what's out there, what's happening, and what events or things that the Marine Board might be able to help prop up and support and be a part of. So.
Well, I know Vince does a lot of work with kids and his business, so maybe we can get Vince involved in helping putting that together.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
So I'll give up my time here, and I see Colleen has her hand up, so
Yep.
I'll put mine down.
Well, I'm sure that Ashley has some ideas around putting together maybe a campaign to highlight any kind of kids events or youth involvement in boating. That would be something that we could maybe highlight once a month or something, and pick a different event so that people would become more aware of the opportunities for youth involvement in boating.
Certainly, and as you hand it over to Member Moran, it's also worth noting, I believe, once upon a time she was a daughter of Neptune and probably has some thoughts herself on getting youth involved into boating. And are there pictures of that out there, or are there? You know?
I have pictures. I don't know that there are pictures out in the wild, so to speak, but definitely love the idea of youth boating. I also did youth sailing for a few summers when I was a kid, but I think that would be a great idea to get more kids involved in boating and be more vocal about that. I had a question, I have two questions actually. One, Janine, I hope you're still out there. I had a question about the impact that we think the wildfires might have on boating facilities, especially as we get into the busy season. And I know cleanup is still going on, but any idea as to what the impact will be, particularly to popular spots? Do we think that they will be open this summer? Do you think there will be crowding because some spots will be closed and folks will be forced over into other areas?
Yeah, so that really is the big question. There are several facilities that will remain closed. I've had a few facility owners on the Clackamas have identified their sites will probably be closed for at least a year. We're working with Lane County and the Forest Service on the McKenzie system to look at trying to have strategic facilities reopened so that there actually is a put-in location and the takeout location, that people aren't just stuck. And so they're working very hard to get a couple facilities reopened. There is a lot of challenges associated with the trees. Most facilities have had damage assessments or identification of hazardous trees. The challenge is the removal. There is a lot of concern over cultural, archaeological issues associated with all the ground disturbance that is going on, as well as the permitting associated with areas within riparian habitat zones. So we are working, the big focus really is to make sure if there is a put in, there is a takeout, or if there is a takeout, there is a put in, so nobody is in an unsafe situation. And there are a few facilities that may have some modified reopening where maybe not the full parking area is available. How that looks and how well it works through the summer with some peak loading, that's really a lot of unknown. I've had some outfitter guides tell me they probably won't go to some of those systems, and I've had other ones say they're actually going to go there because they're curious and they want to kind of document the change as it happens over time from the disaster. So I'm not quite sure yet how dramatic the impact will be, but we're working with numerous different agencies to look at the obstructions and the navigation issues. And I'm going to throw Brian out there again, as well as Randy. They have been extremely busy in receiving and evaluating those, and we're helping them with the FEMA claim to hopefully address those items as we discover them. But it will be an ever-evolving situation. Hazards and obstructions or potential ones that were identified in October and November before the high water. It's no surprise. You're familiar with the water and boating. high water comes in, this stuff changes, moves around. Some of them continue downstream, some of them accumulate and grow. It will be an ever evolving situation, which is why Joe Severson, my GIS planning person, and Brian have worked to develop this obstruction reporting tool to get out to American Whitewater to help capture some of this information. There's a lot of interest in helping us stay aware of where things are going. So it will be an ever evolving situation. I wish I had a better answer, but Mother Nature is far from predictable.
Thank you. I realize it's a little early to ask in January what things might look like in May or June, but thank you. I appreciate that. And then my second question has to do with voter registration and noticing that there were over 12,000 vote registrations that expired in 2018 and they were not renewed. Just curious if anyone has any insight as to what may have happened to those 12,000 votes, if we think they're still on the water, if they're, quietly rotting away in a marina somewhere, or if they might become the next batch of abandoned and derelict vessels.
So, Member Moran, Rachel's going to hop in with some information. I would say that the answer to that is probably a little bit of yes, but just there is a there is a natural ebb and flow. New boats come into the system either because they're new boats or brought from out of state, or they haven't been registered in a while and they're registered, and then this natural outflow of boats then that either they leave the state or they no longer register them because they're not working. And Rachel and I have talked some, and I want to make sure she hops in because I should probably describe better, but we've talked about one of the things that's probably lacking in the way we look at some of our registration data right now is just this idea that we haven't moved to a predictive model where we try to predict what boats are going to register. And then that would be more informative to us than just we lost 12,000, we gained 11,000, but more, the data is telling us that we expect 85% of boats to register, each year, and that we're going to lose 15% and gain hopefully 15%. And so Rachel has some thoughts around doing some of that data collection, and so I'll let her jump in with some of that.
Yes, thank you, Larry. Board Member Moran, members of the board. So in general, most years historically, we've had about 9,000 to 10,000 boats that don't renew, but yet we're adding, new boats to the system. Again, it changes, but year to year, it could be it's around 7,000 like brand new boats to Oregon are added. So those are like brand new boats or boats that are coming from like California or Washington and getting a new Oregon title. And then you have boats that come in that had been expired, sitting in someone's backyard, and that are reintegrated into the system. So the churn historically has been around 10,000. So 12,000 is a little high, but it's actually better than some other year classes. I think looking back, like the 16s for a while were really high. We were at this point. So if you go back a few years, the 16s were almost 18,000, not, continuing the system. Now we've caught up. Some of those 16s have come back in. So Larry's right. There's this natural churn that happens. But then there's certain years, right, where we see an uptick of boats that don't renew. And Larry's right, it would be great to actually track the numbers a little differently. Instead of just looking at the total number of boats we have registered each year, actually look at, are these continuing registrations, new registrations, or old boats coming back in? So I'm working with staff. I want to actually start tracking those three numbers. Because I think they're going to be more interesting and tell a more interesting story. And just so you know, a few years ago, I actually did look at the retention rate on a renewal class. And I found it was interesting because it really varied by size. So boats that were over 20 feet, especially over 23 feet, it was almost, 95% renewed. but then the boats that were less than 15% were only like at like 80%. So it can be variable, based on the length of the boat. It'd be interesting to see if, age of the boat or, even zip code or anything that has any other bearing on the probability that a boat renews every year. But that predictive like that would be much more helpful in the future, because you could look at the class of boats that we have, all their characteristics, and then predict, how many we think are going to renew each year. And then I also think there's an opportunity for some survey work there for groups like those 2018, 2019 boats that have not renewed, reach out to sample and say, what is the reason, and see if there's something that, it's within our power to influence.
Thank you. That's informative, and look forward to seeing those predictive numbers. And agree, I think a survey of people who have not renewed would be very informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Anything else, Colleen?
No, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, Laura, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Another grant status question for Janine. We did that approval for the Lower Columbia River Estuary Partnership, and there was a glitch about their status as a guide outfitter. Did that get resolved so that they can actually complete their project?
Yes, they have completed everything and are now an official registered outfitter and guide, and are in the process of scheduling their trips.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so I think that any other questions for Director Warren on the agency report? Or do you have anything else to add, Director?
Chair Early, I would just add that good, bad, or indifferent legislative session waits for no one. And so I've got some triple bookings during this meeting. And so I will be dropping off from times to take care of some legislative obligations. And during that time, Josh will be doing a majority of the presenting anyway. So if Josh can just fill in for my seat for, in terms of facilitating from the staff side of the meeting, that would be great. He's ready to do that. And I will be dropping off and on throughout the meeting and reconnecting. So full faith, and Josh and Janine, I think, are both up to present this morning. So
I did see that we had some items on the docket for a few of those committees. So I'm assuming that that's what you're going to be monitoring.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Okay, so with that, I think we can move on to item B, and that is the River Ambassador Program. I see that we have Nicole Fredericks on the Teams meeting here, and she is going to be doing a presentation. We received part of that presentation in our board book. Nicole?
Wonderful. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you all for having me today. Yes, as mentioned, my name is Nicole Fredericks. I worked in 2020 as the program developer and volunteer coordinator for the River Ambassador Program hosted by We Love Clean Rivers. We Love Clean Rivers, you may have heard of them through their annual Down the River cleanup on the Clackamas. They have been around for almost 20 years, mobilizing the recreation community to clean up heavily used rivers. And so I'm really excited to give a presentation on our pilot program. All right, if you'll give me a moment to share my screen. All right, let me go back. All right, can I get verbal confirmation that you can see my
Yes.
presentation? Wonderful.
Yes, we can see.
All right. So I like starting off here showing all of our partner organization logos because they are a huge part of the heart of this program. This program is possible because of them. We do have some wonderful tourism groups, local outfitters, land managers at the state and county level. And I do want to point out a big thank you to the Marine Board. I do consider you one of our strongest partners on this program. And so while I'm on that, I want to give a quick shout out to Melissa Burns, who is part of the Marine Board's Watercraft user group, one of their user groups. She gave me some invaluable marketing and outreach advice early on in the process. And then also a huge shout out to Ashley Massey, who is on the call today. She played a huge role. She stepped in early in spring of last year, which we all know was a tumultuous time. She stepped in as convener to help bring our stakeholders together and played a large role in volunteer training, messaging, and overall program development. So thank you, Ashley. All right, so to get started, I know River Ambassadors has been mentioned before, but just very brief history. So this program came out of Clackamas Water Studios that were hosted by Travel Oregon and Mount Hood Territory to discuss recreation along the Clackamas River and tourism along the Clackamas River. So River Ambassadors was one of the solutions to come out of these conversations. So our main objective in 2020 was to provide Clackamas River visitors and recreationists with stewardship and safety information so that they can better enjoy the river. And so our messaging included basic river safety, take care out there provided by Travel Oregon, stash the trash bag campaign provided by the Clackamas River Basin Council, leave no trace, and weekly river conditions. If you'll take a moment to look at the picture on the right, this is our basic setup. So we had volunteers at very popular access points along the Clackamas River. And so they would be there for approximately a 5-hour shift with information for river and park visitors who are right about to get on the water. And as you can see, our whiteboard there showed weekly river conditions, such as the forecasted weather, the temperature of the water, the rapids rating, etc. And just a few numbers. So we did have 5 sites over 3 parks. We were out there for 10 weekends, and our small but mighty group was made up of 8 volunteers, and we were able to engage with 1,649 visitors. All right, so our volunteers, fantastic group of folks. Most of them have lived along the Clackamas River for a long time, and we had a range of backgrounds represented, including teachers, park staff, EMTs, anglers. These are people who really care about the river. Several of them are folks who very intentionally make sure to clean the river every time they float down, and they have YouTube channels and posts on social media to try to encourage other folks to do the same. And so they were a great group to have out there engaging with river visitors. We did have virtual training. It wasn't our intention at first, but of course, COVID made that a necessity. And so another thank you to Ashley, as well as to Clay Courtright with the Parks Department, who helped co-facilitate that virtual training. It was a wonderful time, and I look forward to when those can be offered in person as well as virtual in the future. All right, and then on the ground experience, our volunteers really did have a fantastic time out there engaging with visitors, having positive conversations about stewardship and safety out on the water. We also, as a part of their shift, they provided us with a report of how many people they engaged with, the kind of conversations they had, what are they seeing on the ground, which then allowed me to have conversations on a weekly basis with our land managers so that we could continually evaluate, what are the experiences our park users are having, what experience our river users having, how can we improve those, and how can we overall improve our program. All right, and of course, I can't give this presentation without talking about COVID. We were affected. Our initial start date was going to be at the beginning of May, May through September. We were delayed and we started in July this year, going from July to September. But thankfully, we were able to work with the Trail Ambassador Program, which is a group hosted by TKO, the Trail Keepers of Oregon, partially what the River Ambassadors is based off of. And so we worked with them to put together safety precautions to make this pilot program possible this year, which included, what's all second nature to us now, masks, 6-foot distance, making sure that they had verbal and physical tools to make sure to ensure that 6-foot distance. And then we did require residency in Clackamas County. This was one of the biggest things keeping our volunteer group small. I had a lot of people from Multnomah County requesting to be a part of this program, and hopefully in the future they can. At the time, we were looking to make sure that we were keeping folks from non-essential travel, essentially. But, and then wildfires. So while we were very lucky in that our volunteers wrapped up the weekend before wildfires really hit, as mentioned earlier in this meeting, we know that wildfires are going to affect our waterways. And so looking forward to the future, knowing that, making sure that we have up-to-date messaging so that people are aware of the conditions of waterways as they hop on, so that they can stay safe, essentially. I should also mention that COVID did affect some of the objectives of this program. It was started, excuse me, it was started from a lens of tourism. And so part of this program was to encourage folks to stop and enjoy the communities immediately around the Clackamas River. And unfortunately, this year we weren't able to do as much of that, encouraging and promoting as we would like to, because not encouraging non-essential travel, a lot of places were closed. And so as we look to the future, we're looking to increase some of that messaging. All right, just a quick overview of our sites. We did have 5 total sites, 3 parks: Barton, Carver, Mile McIver State Park. If you know the Clackamas River, you know that these are very highly used access sites along the Clackamas, and so it was a great starting point for this program. We have talked in a recent stakeholder meeting about expanding both up and downstream. But for 2020, we did have 10 weekends, and we were able to engage, as I mentioned earlier, with 1,649 visitors. All right, and so I wanted to report back to you about some of the things that we learned, because this program at the core is meant for expansion and is meant for duplication over different waterways. So I want to talk a little bit about what we learned. So first of all, we learned a lot about very site-specific information. Every access point is very different, and our river visitors were looking for different information. And so as we were able to get those shift reports each week, we were able to continually improve our program and gather the information that river visitors were looking for. It also allowed us to kind of get a small window into, what is the recreation experience? What are the equipment levels here at each site, right? Do people regularly bring a life jacket to this access point, or no, and why? And then across the board, so as I mentioned before, Stash the Trash Bags, if you're not familiar, the Clackamas River Basin Council prints these fantastic mesh trash bags, which are pictured at the bottom of the screen here. And they are for river visitors to grab as they get on the water, to not only pack out their own trash, but also to pick up trash along the way to keep the Clackamas clean. And then the whiteboards that I mentioned earlier, where we had weekly river conditions posted. Both the Stash the Trash Bags and the whiteboards helped volunteers engage with visitors. They were a point of stewardship and safety information that helped conversations go. And then in addition, there was a consistent request by both river users and also our volunteers for more life jackets, whistles, and Stash the Trash Bags. So we did have life jacket kiosks at almost all of our sites, but we are continually running out of life jackets. Whistles, we weren't able to have whistles this year, but we're very much looking forward to getting them next year. And then Stash the Trash Bags, we were also consistently running out. So looking forward to to making sure that we have more on hand because people are interested in using them, especially if a volunteer is handing them out, especially for free. All right. And so overall lessons, as I mentioned before, this program is meant for expansion and duplication. So what can we learn from our pilot program in 2020 to not only improve this program, but other river ambassador programs throughout the state in the future? So first of all, the most successful sites that we had were able to adapt to site-specific information. As I mentioned before, each site is incredibly different. If you're familiar with Carver Park along the Clackamas River, this is a place where most folks ended their trip. And so we ended up having a small recycling program nearby that the volunteers could look over. They served as a lost and found. They had a lot of information about, you know, how do you find your towed car if you didn't park properly, things like that. It was very different information than what we needed at Barton and at Milam McIver State Park. Second, so our largest sorts of engagements started with what I'm calling immediately useful handouts. So this year was our life jackets and stash the trash bags. Next year, hopefully we can add whistles to that. But people were really interested in these immediately useful handouts, right? They forgot their life jacket at home. They, you know, didn't grab a stash the trash bag because they didn't know what the program was about, but they were more than happy to when handed. And then third, our River Ambassador program worked best when we treat it as a communication channel. So early on in the process, we talked a lot about, you know, what is the messaging of this program, but realizing through the year that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have a lot of partner organizations who are creating wonderful messaging, including the Marine Board. And so how do we then work as a megaphone for folks who are just about to jump in the water? What kind of stewardship and safety information can we directly hand off to them that's useful to them at that point? Wonderful. So I think we might have a few minutes for questions.
Does anybody have any questions? I see that Craig, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Nicole, this is Board Member Withey. Thank you for what you do. I appreciate it. I think it really helps the boating community. I have a couple questions. First of all, how exactly does the board support your effort? And secondly, you talk about this is for expansion, not duplication. What do you mean by that?
Well, to your first question, I see support definitely in staff and those associated with the Marine Board. Their time has been incredibly helpful in 2020, and I hope that can be the case in future years. If they're including the extension of messaging, connection to other partner organizations, any support that we can get in the way of those immediately useful handouts that I was talking about earlier, how we can be connected to more whistles and life jackets. That's where I see the crux of this partnership and support. And then your second question, I think I missed a couple words. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, you talked about this is for expansion, not duplication. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I misspoke. Expansion and duplication. So at our recent stakeholder meeting, we did talk about additional sites that we can add up and downstream along the Clackamas River. And then from the beginning, we have been talking about this program in the context of, all right, how can we then expand this to the Willamette and other highly used rivers? And I have heard through several sources that there are considerations for a program along the Willamette.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you.
So Nicole, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So has your organization, through your development of this program, put together any type of a template that could be passed on to other organizations that would be interested in also conducting a program similar to this on different waterways throughout the state, or, you know, not necessarily moving waters, but even just lakes or things like that?
Yeah, definitely to an extent. We do have a pretty thorough handbook training manual that we put together, which is really the starting point for messaging and for getting volunteers out there. And then we do have additional documentation for actually having volunteers on the ground. In addition, I would say that we do have a strong partnership with the trail ambassadors, who I mentioned earlier, who are also expanding their efforts from from trail to beach ambassadorships. And so we're working with them to make sure that this is a program that can be duplicated easily.
Well, that's great. Thank you. And thanks for taking the time to make a presentation to us. We really appreciate all the efforts that you've gone to develop this program for Oregon's boaters. Does anyone else have any questions? Larry?
Chairly, members of the board, I just wanted to share that this idea has been part of our strategic plan for quite a while as an agency. And so having an organization like this to work with and all these stakeholders and partners was just a real gift to us to help further that. And we often hear about, you know, education and getting out there and really informing boaters, and programs like this, you know, I think they have a big place in our future and how we help inform the boating community on the water. So I know we're internally very excited about this, and again, and would echo Nicole's praise for Ashley's work on this program as well. So
thank you. I remembered that from the strategic plan, which is why I kind of was interested in a template for the organization of it, because it could be passed on to other organizations. But it sounds like the River Ambassadors program that you've developed has the workings in order and are certainly willing to help others involved too. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, yes. And thank you again for all of your work and partnership in this. This is a fantastic program, and I look forward to seeing it grow.
Okay, so again, thanks very much. And we will move on to item C then, which is the Facilities Grant 1670 Westport. And Janine Balek will be addressing us.
Thank you, Chair, early members of the board. Steve Meschke, the Clatsop County Parks Director, is also on the call. So this is a Steve, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. So this is a project that has been a decade.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing an echo. I'm not sure where it's coming from. So this has taken a decade to get to this point. I'm really sorry, but I only have my on, so I'm not sure where that echo is coming from.
Do you have a speaker on? That's on. Mine's doing it too now.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right.
Twice.
I will try to make this work. I'm not sure I can hear you back, but if I see talking, I will unmute the speaker component and we'll work through this. So anyway, this has been a project we've been working on over a decade with the county. A past board, I don't think anybody on the current board has actually visited the site as part of a board meeting, but we have been working on this massive redevelopment at the Westport launch. And permits are in hand, every clearance has been made, and we are in front of you today to ask to buy materials, to have them in hand so that when the county submits a grant application for the construction phase, the contractor will be able to take advantage of the best weather and get this project done. The county is coming forward with a commendable cash match, especially in the times of COVID and impacts to budgets. ODF&W will also be coming to the table for the construction phase. The Columbia River Yachting Association has a financial commitment. We've already secured federal funds for the tie-up facility portion. This is really a phenomenal project that is not only a place of safe harborage for cruisers and provides will be providing an accessible launch point for paddlers to access Westport Slough. This has just taken a long time in coming. Various phases have been up to the board previously, and this is a key piece. By buying the materials ahead of time, it also reduces the cost of paying profit and overhead to a contractor. So it's another way to save some funds by having them in hand. And I will tell you right now, the market is very volatile. We're hearing steel aluminum is challenging to get a hold of. And so we want to take away any barriers that would delay the future construction if approved by the board. So staff is recommending, let me see, I'll read it out so that way you can just approve what staff is recommending. If you so choose to do so, I am recommending $452,299.87 of boating facility grant funds, $125,000 of waterway access grant funds, $62,700.13 of boating infrastructure federal funds, to match $258,900 of applicant match as identified in the budget, for a total project of $898,900. Does the board have any questions of myself or of Steve? Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. As I read through this, it talked about having to clean up some environmental contamination. What was that, and are we certain it's all cleaned up? It's all cleaned up.
Steve, I'll default to you. You were involved heavily with it.
Yeah, so there was a lot of old trash and stuff left at the mill site from when the mill was there, and the town was using the site kind of as a dump. So we had to clean up some of that. But when we first started this project back in 2004, there was hydrocarbons from fuel left in the soil from the mill. DEQ came through. They did Georgia Pacific, actually, working with DEQ in the voluntary site cleanup program. They did test wells and monitoring of the site for several years and deemed that the level of pollution was low enough where we were just pretty much capping over the top of the parking lot, that there was no cleanup needed. So what fuel is in the ground is just going to stay there, and it's minimal, but it's not going to affect any recreational use or any hazards to anybody using the site. So there was no major cleanup to speak of out there other than just trash left over from the mill.
So the site has been cleared by
Yeah, the site's been cleared by DEQ, and they said it's good to go. We have letters of all that. So there's no more cleanup required. No other monitoring required either.
The presentation I read is we're approving a project for purchase of materials. What about the installation? Something we'll fund down the road?
Yes, I believe that. When I was talking to Janine, we were talking about applying for the construction part of it in the Cycle 1 grant. To start the construction, it's a summer in-water work period. So it's a summer to late fall is the in-water work period. So the plan was to come back for the construction part of it.
So my preference when we approve a project is that we approve the entire project, not just part of it. So I think we're somewhat committed if we purchase the material to fund the construction.
Janine?
Yeah, I'll let Janine answer that one.
Okay.
I think the echo is coming from you, Steve. You mute yourself, I think the echo goes away.
All right, I'm having to toggle on and off my speaker to hear conversations. So I think what Member Withy was asking was, does this commit us to a future phase? And the answer would be no. It's always up to the board's discretion on whether or not you want to do any further phases. The other part is, I actually debated on bringing forth the material purchase with a conceptual award for construction based on the approval of our budget. And we are still working through the stormwater costs to finalize those. So I've got a high level number for the construction, but I wasn't comfortable bringing that forward yet. The deadline for the Cycle 1 grants is March 1st. I do anticipate looking at that and then potentially bringing that grant forward at the April meeting to have the board consider doing a conditional approval upon the passage of our budget for the 21-23, so that the county can initiate the solicitation process and have a contractor on board. That would also let us know exactly where the budget is, and if it comes in under budget, we can basically reduce our grant and have more money to give out. That is what I'm thinking, but as of now, I wasn't comfortable bringing the entire package forward yet.
Okay, I understand.
Hold on just a minute, Member Withy, so I can unmute the speaker to hear you.
Okay, I understand and I appreciate that, but as a board, it's my view that if we spend $500,000, we need to spend it towards completion of an entire project. So I do feel a commitment to completing the whole project if we spend this amount of money.
Okay.
So Janine, do you have a total cost for this entire project figured out that you are going to be submitting in the future? I think that that's basically what Member Withy is asking about, because you know, it is our preference to look at the project as a whole instead of kind of piecemealing it through this process.
Yeah. So we do have a preliminary estimate for the construction of about 2.1 million. And Steve, you called yesterday and gave me an update on the county's commitment for your cash match of at least 25%. And as mentioned, we are working with ODF&W. They are potentially going to provide up to 1.5 million, but they are waiting to see the impact of COVID on their federal appropriation for the sport fish and trust fund monies that they receive. So we're still kind of working through that. I will have a better idea of what ODF&W will provide by the end of March, but roughly the additional cost for the construction will be about 2.1 million.
And what portion of that do you expect to be the Marine Board's request?
So I'm going to have to do some quick math here.
Well, in the meantime, why don't you do some quick math? And I think that Colleen has a question too.
Okay.
Can't hear you, Colleen.
While you're doing the math there, less of a question, more of a comment. I've been going to Westport, well, COVID notwithstanding, for many summers since I was a child. And I know as far as the cruising community goes, there's a lot of excitement for this project moving forward. It seems like a prudent decision to me to purchase materials now when material costs are known versus waiting until further down the line when everything is in order. I understand the process of needing to get permits and whatnot, but it just seems like construction costs are always what balloons because no one can estimate what materials will cost 6, 9 months, 12 months from now. So it seems like a prudent decision to purchase materials now so that work can begin immediately upon getting those permits.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're ready.
All right, so quick math. If the county submits just the minimum of 25%, I anticipate the board would spend $400,000 of federal boating infrastructure grant money. And then depending on what ODF&W kicks in, potentially another $375,000 to $175,000 of a combination of waterway access and our regular boating facility grants for the installation of the facilities. So we would be looking at somewhere between, let's say, $775,000 to $575,000 of state and federal funds. Member Withey, I saw your hand up first.
Well, if we're ready, I'll make a motion that we approve grant number 1670 with the understanding that we'll fund the entire project in due course at the estimated amount that you just provided.
Laura, you have a question?
Well, I'll second Member Withey's motion, and just again to make it clear in my brain, we are separating the materials purchase from the construction, basically so that we can get the materials under fabrication, get them in possession, so that we don't lose the 2021 construction season.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, just to reiterate the motion, and the second then is to approve grant 1670 for the purchase of the materials with a pre-commitment to funding the project at the estimated $575,000 to $775,000 amount that was stated. Is that correct? Member Withey?
Yes, that's my motion.
Okay. Okay, is there any additional discussion? So, Laura, you still have your hand up?
My bad. It's taking a long time for it to hit the drop thing.
Yeah. Okay. Vince?
I can hear. I'm good. I have no other questions.
Okay. Okay, seeing as there is none, we will vote on the approval for the facilities grant 1670. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, good luck, Steve, with the purchase of the materials.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Chair, early members of the board.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and so we'll go ahead and move on to item D at this point, unless people need a break. Is everybody okay, or do you want to take a short break? Okay, we're going to move on to item D then, and that's the rulemaking request regarding Crescent Lake in Klamath County, and Josh Mulholland is up to give us a presentation. Welcome, Josh.
Oh, thank you, Chair Early, members of the board. For the record, my name is Josh Mulholland, Environment and Policy Program Manager for the Oregon State Marine Board. I'm going to start today with item D, a relatively simple item. I was contacted by the Klamath County Sheriff's Office in the fall regarding safety concerns in a small area of Crescent Lake in Klamath County. For some of the boating season, this cove becomes a party cove, if you want to call it that. But also, and more importantly, it becomes a widely used boat launch and access area, albeit an informal one. The Sheriff's Office is seeing more and more potential for hazardous situations in this relatively small cove, and has asked that this area to be designated as a slow no wake zone to be consistent with the laws around the formal launches that are already around the lake. In the board book, there's a letter from the Sheriff's Office along with some photos that they provided regarding the closure area. And I hope you had time to review those and look at the photos of this small beach cove area. Just a little real quick information on Crescent Lake for those of you who may not be familiar with it. It's a relatively large, 4,500 acre lake, very deep in northern Klamath County. depending on the water level, the area that's proposed to be designated for Slow No Wake is give or take about 14 acres. And then you'll see I provided a couple photos of the lake and then the inset, so where you can see the extent of the Slow No Wake area that was proposed. Member Withey, I see your hand up, so please go ahead.
I meant to talk after you were done, so go ahead and complete it, Joe.
Okay. I'm almost done, I promise. So before I kick it to you for your decision, I'd like to point out from the staff point of view that this Slow No Wake zone, if proposed and adopted, would be consistent with restrictions that we have for formal public accesses, the 200-foot Slow No Wake buffer that accesses and large morages receive. Also, as was mentioned in the sheriff's office's letter, they're happy to take on the task of putting the buoys out and maintaining them. They're simply looking for us to help from the rule standpoint. So no additional work from OSMB staff would be required as part of this. So yeah, the recommendation from staff would be in deference to our law enforcement partners, and because this request has some simple logic to it, staff recommends that the board open the rulemaking process and direct staff to propose the rules that would establish this zone. And with that, I'm done. So, Member Withey, please proceed.
Yeah, I would like to speak in favor of this proposal. I don't know if anybody besides myself is familiar with Crescent Lake. It is a party lake in the summer. It's one of the few lakes in the Cascades where there's actual swimming on the beach. It is a deep lake, but along the shoreline, it's fairly shallow. And it is in the irrigation system in Deschutes County. It indeed is the headwaters for that irrigation system. So water level is drawn down at the end of the summer. And the main dock and ramp facility is at the opposite end of the lake. And it does get pretty unusable in the summer. The area we're speaking of is on the backside of the lake, and it has an unimproved road that gets back into that area. So it's pretty difficult for someone to pull a boat back in there, although they do. But there's a big party at the lake, and a lot of kids and young people out swimming in the water and participating. So it does present some hazards when you have boating activity around those individuals. So I'm in full support of this proposal. I just want to pass on my knowledge of the lake. I will be making a motion that we proceed with rulemaking regarding this request.
Okay, thank you, Craig. I've been there too, and yes, a lot of families use that area, but it is a party lake. You know, everybody over there knows that, and so from a safety aspect, I would agree that this would be very good to go ahead and move forward with. Vince, you got your hand up?
No, I just say I agree with Craig. I think in the spirit of safety, I would like to second his motion to grant the request for Slow No Wake zone.
Okay, so just to be clear, that would open the rulemaking and the staff would come back with the proposed rules and we would be addressing that at the next meeting.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes.
Yes. Do you have something else to add? Oh, okay, you put your hand down. Any other questions or comments regarding the motion? Okay. All those in favor of opening rulemaking regarding Crescent Lake in Klamath County as proposed by Member Withey, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So I think that, Josh, if you don't mind, we will take a short recess before this next item. So Jennifer, if you're still there, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back in 10 minutes.
And just as a reminder to everybody, it'll take us just a second to close off the live stream, so you're still live here for a few moments. I saw them heading over to pause that.
Thank you.
All right. Just so everybody knows, somebody just informed me that we're not going to be able to pause the live stream. So just for members' sake, if you're not wanting to be on camera for the public right now, you would want to stop your video and stop your audio and take your break.
I think we can go ahead if everybody's back now. Colleen, are you back? Not
Yes,
quite.
ma'am.
Okay, go ahead and get the live stream started again and let me know when that's done.
I'm back, Val.
Thanks, Vince.
Val, Larry announced while you were gone that they couldn't pause the live stream, so it's never been down.
Oh, okay. So we are ready to go back. We are back from our short break and we are on item E, which is the consideration of rulemaking for OAR 250-020-0280 and 250-020-0032. And just before you get started, Josh, I would like to say that we had tremendous public comment. It was almost overwhelming, I have to say, especially the big last batch that came.
The already passed pass-through zones and extend the regulations for on-water infrastructure that's currently in place in the Newburgh Pool to the stretch of water between Willamette Falls and the proposed pass-through zones, that Waverly Marina area. So rules were proposed with the Secretary of State's office over the past couple months. 2 virtual hearings were held to assist interested parties, provide informed input. Staff put together a companion document to the official rulemaking notices that I provided in your board book, and I have available if we want to visit that. I can share my screen, but it was, just a simplification of what the rules that were being proposed were, so the public could provide some input. I do understand there's been some confusion regarding the 2 rule filings that have been filed. So that's simply because of an artifact of how our rules are structured, our local rules, on a county by county basis. So any rule that will affect multiple counties has to be filed in the different county rules, even if the verbiage is completely the same as was basically the case with this current rulemaking. And I want to let the board know the board can certainly vote on separate aspects of the current proposal. But the last 15 months or so of work has birthed the proposal with the rules for the different counties. And I would encourage the board to look at it